I've been renting your place on Airbnb while you're traveling, my Aunt Gloria admitted casually over Sunday brunch, sipping her mimosa as if she'd just confessed to borrowing a sweater. Since you're overseas so much anyway, I figured the apartment was just sitting empty. I've made $12,000 in the past 4 months, you can have half if you want. My mother nodded approvingly. Gloria's always been so resourceful. But why did my blood run cold at her words, and why did I immediately reach for my phone to call the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service? Because my apartment wasn't just an apartment. It was a protected residence assigned to me by the Italian Consulate General, where I served as a senior cultural attaché. A property covered by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. A location that required security clearances for anyone entering and notification to the host government for any changes in occupancy. My aunt had just admitted to giving 23 random strangers access to a diplomatically protected property, potentially compromising international security protocols, violating federal law, and creating an incident that could affect U.S.-Italian relations. Gloria, I said slowly, setting down my fork, I need you to tell me exactly what you've done. I'd worked for the Italian government for 12 years. My career path had been unconventional, an American with dual citizenship, educated in art history, recruited by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to serve in their cultural diplomacy division. I'd worked in Rome, then Paris, then Tokyo, and finally New York, where I'd been stationed for the past 3 years as senior cultural attaché at the Italian Consulate General. The position came with certain privileges. A residence in a pre-approved building, partially subsidized by the Italian government. Diplomatic immunity for official acts. Access to secure communications. And the protection, and responsibilities, that came with representing a foreign nation on American soil. My family understood almost none of this. To them, I was Vanessa who works at the Italian embassy, it's a consulate, but they never remembered the difference. They knew I attended fancy events, traveled frequently, and lived in Manhattan. They didn't understand security protocols, diplomatic immunity, or the Vienna Convention. And apparently, they didn't understand that my apartment was not available for their entrepreneurial ventures. Gloria's confession unfolded over the next hour. She'd obtained a spare key from my mother months ago, for emergencies, Mom had claimed, though apparently the emergency was Gloria's desire to monetize my living space. She'd created an Airbnb listing with photos taken during a family visit, describing the apartment as a luxury Manhattan retreat with stunning city views. For 16 weeks, she'd rented it out during my frequent international trips, cultural festivals in Milan, conferences in Geneva, bilateral meetings in Washington. She'd coordinated access using a smart lock she'd installed, greeting guests remotely, collecting payments into a personal PayPal account. 23 separate bookings. 47 individual guests. 4 months of unauthorized access to a protected diplomatic residence. It's not like you were using it, Gloria said defensively. The place was just sitting there. Gloria, that apartment is classified as a protected foreign mission residence. It's registered with the State Department. There are security protocols. Oh, please. You're being dramatic. It's just an apartment. It's legally considered Italian territory for certain purposes. You gave strangers access to what is essentially a foreign government facility. Gloria rolled her eyes. You sound like one of those spy movies. It's a 2-bedroom in Midtown. It's not the Pentagon. My mother intervened. Vanessa, don't be so harsh. Gloria was trying to be helpful. You're always complaining about expenses. I'm not complaining about expenses. The Italian government subsidizes my housing specifically because it's a secure residence. I stood up. I need to make some calls. This is serious, more serious than either of you understand. You're overreacting, Gloria called after me. I wasn't. The Diplomatic Security Service agent was named Robert Holloway. He arrived at my apartment within 4 hours of my call, accompanied by a specialist in diplomatic facility security. They swept the residence for surveillance devices, checked for signs of tampering, and documented everything. We'll need the full list of guests, Agent Holloway said. Names, identification, length of stay. All of it. I'll get everything from the Airbnb account. Your aunt, she had no idea about the diplomatic status? None. She saw an empty apartment and a business opportunity. My family doesn't understand what I do. They're going to understand it now. He wasn't wrong. The investigation expanded rapidly. The State Department contacted the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who contacted their security services, who launched their own inquiry into potential breaches. My superior at the consulate, Consul General Marco Benedetti, called me personally. Vanessa, this is extremely serious. We've had to report this to Rome. There are protocols for compromised diplomatic residences. I understand, sir. I had no knowledge of what was happening. We know. The investigation makes that clear. But the fact remains that dozens of unvetted individuals had access to a protected property. We found no evidence of espionage or tampering, but the breach itself is significant. What happens now? For you? Nothing negative, you're not at fault. But we'll need to relocate you to a new residence, one that hasn't been compromised. And your aunt? He paused. She's going to face legal consequences. The U.S. Attorney's Office is already involved. She didn't understand what she was doing. Intent doesn't change the violation. She gave unauthorized access to a foreign diplomatic facility. That's a federal offense. Gloria was arrested 3 weeks later. The charges were sobering: unauthorized entry into a diplomatic facility, facilitating entry by unauthorized persons, and fraud. The FBI had traced every guest who'd stayed in my apartment, interviewing each one, running background checks, and ensuring none had connections to foreign intelligence services. They'd found nothing sinister, just tourists, business travelers, and a bachelorette party from Ohio. But the investigation itself cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, strained diplomatic relations, and created paperwork that would take months to resolve. My aunt's bail was set at $75,000. The family meeting was held at my mother's house. Everyone was there: my parents, Gloria's husband Richard, my cousins, various aunts and uncles who'd heard fragments of the story and wanted the full picture. They looked at me like I'd done something wrong. "This is ridiculous," my cousin Derek said. "She rented out an apartment. That's not a crime." "It is when the apartment is a protected diplomatic residence." "You should have told her," my mother accused. "If you'd explained what your apartment was." "I did explain. Multiple times. I told Gloria it was a secure residence. I told her there were restrictions on who could visit. She ignored everything because she saw a way to make money." "You didn't say she'd go to prison." "I didn't think she'd secretly install locks and run a rental operation in my home." I took a breath, trying to remain calm. "Gloria accessed my apartment without permission. She rented it to strangers without my knowledge. She made $12,000 while potentially compromising diplomatic security. These are her choices, not mine." Gloria's husband Richard spoke up. "She was trying to help. You're always traveling, leaving that expensive place empty." "It wasn't expensive for me. The Italian government subsidizes it specifically because it requires security clearance for access." I looked around at my family. "Do any of you understand what I actually do? I'm not a receptionist at an embassy. I'm a diplomatic officer representing a foreign government on American soil. My work has legal protections and legal responsibilities that most people never encounter." Silence. Gloria broke laws that protect international diplomatic operations. Not because she's malicious, because she's ignorant. Because all of you decided years ago that my job was working at the Italian embassy, and never bothered to learn more. The trial lasted 3 days. Gloria's lawyer argued ignorance. She hadn't understood the apartment's protected status, hadn't known about diplomatic facilities, hadn't intended to compromise anything. The prosecutor countered that ignorance wasn't a defense, that Gloria had been warned about restrictions, and that her actions had caused significant harm to U.S.-Italian diplomatic relations. The judge was unsympathetic. "Mrs. Miller, you entered a protected foreign mission residence repeatedly without authorization. You facilitated access by 47 individuals whose identities you never verified. You profited financially from activities that violated multiple federal statutes." She shook her head. "Whether you understood the legal framework is irrelevant. The law doesn't require understanding for violation." Gloria was convicted of unauthorized entry and sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. The judge reduced it to 6 months plus 3 years of probation, citing her lack of prior record and the absence of actual espionage. She also had to forfeit the $12,000 she made and pay $45,000 in restitution for the costs of the security investigation. My family blamed me. Not openly, not directly, but the silences at gatherings, the uninvitations to events, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. I become the person who let Gloria go to prison rather than the victim of her scheme. "You could have asked for leniency," my mother said during one strained phone call. I testified truthfully. "That's what the court required." "You could have explained that she didn't know." "I did explain that." Her lawyer explained that. The judge heard all of it and still convicted her because what she did was illegal regardless of her knowledge. This has torn the family apart. Gloria tore the family apart when she decided to run a business out of my home without permission. I'm not responsible for her choices. The conversation ended badly. Most of our conversations ended badly now. The career consequences were complicated. The Italian government didn't blame me. The investigation had clearly established my innocence. But the incident had created friction, requiring apologies at multiple diplomatic levels, additional security reviews, and a general sense of embarrassment that attached itself to my file. Consul General Benedetti was understanding but realistic. Your career isn't over, Vanessa. But this will follow you. Postings will be scrutinized more carefully. Security clearances will take longer. He sighed. It's not fair, but international diplomacy often isn't. I understand. We're transferring you to Rome. A fresh start, away from this situation. The Cultural Ministry has a position that would benefit from your experience. Thank you, sir. Thank yourself. You've handled this with professionalism throughout. That counts for more than you might realize. The move to Rome happened quickly. I packed my compromised apartment. The new tenants would be a young Italian diplomat and his wife, who would hopefully never have relatives interested in vacation rental schemes. I said goodbye to New York, to the job I'd loved, to the city that had been home for 3 years. My family's goodbye was perfunctory. We'll miss you, my mother said without conviction. Will you? She didn't answer. Gloria was in federal prison by then, serving the first month of her sentence. My cousins had rallied around her husband and children, treating them as victims of my overreaction rather than casualties of Gloria's greed. I'd become the family villain, the daughter who sent her aunt to prison for borrowing an apartment. The truth was more complicated, but truth had never been the family's strong suit. Rome was a revelation. Away from my family's gravity, I thrived. The Cultural Ministry position evolved into something larger, coordinating international arts partnerships, developing cultural exchange programs, representing Italy at UNESCO conferences. I earned promotions, received commendations, built a reputation separate from the scandal that had marked my final American posting. I also found perspective. The family that blamed me for Gloria's consequences had never understood my work, my achievements, my life. They reduced me to Vanessa, who works at the embassy, and then blamed me when their ignorance collided with reality. Their disappointment wasn't about me, it was about losing a narrative that had always been fiction. I'd stopped trying to change that narrative years ago. Now I stopped caring whether they believed it. Gloria was released after 4 months for good behavior. She sent me a letter, handwritten, from the halfway house where she was completing her sentence. Vanessa, I don't expect forgiveness. What I did was wrong, and I've had 4 months to understand just how wrong. I told myself I was being resourceful, making use of empty space, even helping you out somehow. I was lying to myself. The prison counselor made me research diplomatic immunity and the Vienna Convention. I finally understand what I compromised. Not just your apartment, your career, your relationships, international agreements I didn't know existed. I'm so sorry. I won't ask to see you. I know the family blames you, and I've been trying to correct that, but people believe what they want to believe. You were right about everything. I was wrong about everything. That's the truth, whether anyone accepts it or not. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back. Our correspondence continued for 2 years. Gloria's letters tracked her rehabilitation, community service, job searching, family tensions, gradual acceptance. She'd become, unexpectedly, my window into the family I'd left behind. Your mother still thinks you overreacted, Gloria wrote. I've tried explaining, but she doesn't want to understand. She'd rather believe you had choices you didn't have. Derek asked about your work in Rome, another letter said. First time any of them have shown interest. I told him about the UNESCO conference and your promotion. He didn't know you'd been promoted. Richard and I are doing better, a later letter mentioned. The kids understand now, I was wrong, you were doing your job. They're proud of you, even if they can't say it in front of their grandparents. The letters built something I hadn't expected, a real relationship with an aunt who had once nearly destroyed my career. Gloria understood me now, not because I'd explained but because she'd been forced to learn. Her understanding had cost her 4 months of freedom and years of family standing. It had also made her the only family member who saw me clearly. I returned to New York 5 years after the incident. The Italian Foreign Ministry was opening a new cultural center in Manhattan, and they wanted me to lead it, a full-circle moment, returning to the city where my career had nearly ended, now in a role that acknowledged everything I'd built since. The opening gala was attended by diplomats, artists, politicians, and cultural leaders. My name was on the invitation as executive director. My photo was in the press materials. My family received invitations. Only Gloria came. She looked different, older, humbler, but also more present than I'd ever seen her at family gatherings. This is incredible, she said, looking around the center's grand atrium. You built this? Oversaw its development. Curated the inaugural exhibitions. Negotiated the partnerships. I smiled. It's been a lot of work. It shows. She hesitated. I tried to get the others to come. Your mother said she was busy. Derek didn't respond. The usual. I know. I expected it. Does it hurt? I considered the question honestly. It used to. But I built a life they never understood, and that life is full now. Their absence from this room doesn't diminish what's in it. That's growth. That's 5 years of therapy and perspective. I laughed. But also growth. We walked through the exhibition together, Italian Renaissance drawings on loan from the Uffizi, contemporary Italian artists in dialogue with their historical predecessors. Gloria asked thoughtful questions, genuinely interested in what I'd created. I'm proud of you, she said as we reached the final gallery. I know I have no right to say that, after everything. You have every right. You did something wrong, you faced the consequences, and you grew from it. That's more than most people manage. I squeezed her hand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. And for writing back, after everything. Family is complicated. Family is a mess. But sometimes messes become compost, something new grows. I looked at my aunt, this woman who had once nearly destroyed my career, who had spent 4 months in federal prison because of her own choices, who had emerged from that experience as the only family member who truly saw me. Something new is definitely growing, I agreed. The cultural center thrived. 5 years later, it's one of New York's most respected cultural institutions, hosting exhibitions, performances, and educational programs that draw hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. My career has flourished along with it, appointments, honors, recognition that my family still doesn't fully understand but has grudgingly begun to acknowledge. My mother called last month, the first conversation we'd had in over a year. I saw your center in the New York Times, she said. A full-page feature. I saw that too. It looks impressive. It is impressive. We've worked very hard. Silence stretched between us. I never understood what you did, she finally admitted. I thought you were a receptionist or something. I didn't realize. You didn't ask. For 20 years, you didn't ask. I'm asking now. It was a start. A small one, but a start. I'm a diplomatic officer representing Italy in the United States, I said. I've spent my career building cultural bridges between countries, preserving art, creating programs that help people understand each other across national boundaries. It's not what you expected me to do, but it's meaningful work that I'm proud of. I'm proud of you too, my mother said. Even if I'm terrible at showing it. You are terrible at showing it. But you can get better. She rented out a diplomatic residence because she saw empty space and dollar signs. She didn't understand the Vienna Convention, security protocols, or international law, didn't want to understand them. But laws don't require understanding to break, and consequences don't wait for comprehension. Gloria went to prison for 4 months. My career went to Rome, then back to New York, transformed into something larger than it might have been otherwise. And the family that blamed me for enforcing laws I didn't write? They're slowly learning that the embassy receptionist they imagined was building something they couldn't see. The Cultural Center stands in Manhattan now, a monument to work they never understood, created by the daughter they never asked about. 23 Airbnb guests almost compromised international security. What they actually compromised was my family's ability to ignore who I'd become.